الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله وحبيبه أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على أحمد واشرف الذين الطاهرين المعصومين ولعنة أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى يوم الدين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله والله التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Today I would like to talk about the feminine presence, the feminine spirit in Karbala in particular, and in the struggle for liberation in general. Why you turn the lights down? Okay. But you want me to start crying or something? One of the major issues in the Western world in particular today is the status of women. What, as they say, what is a woman? It is, these questions are symbols of the decline of human beings, where things that are obvious, things that have been known to be a given, are seen outside of their qualitative context, and they are seen only in terms of things that are materialistic, like biology, biological accident. When I say biological accident, is that, we tend to divorce biology even from femininity. That biology is just simply a sort of a organic accident, so to speak, where women are stereotyped into a very marginal reality, that actually denies them their own reality itself. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the reality of gender, or the reality of biological sex, from an Islamic or deeper still, an Islamic metaphysical context. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُم مَّوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and of His signs is that He created for you from among your anfus, from among, it's translated yourselves, okay? But it's something that's lost in translation here. From among your anfus, from among your souls, okay? A soul is, I don't want to say a different reality, I would say maybe greater an extension of our physical reality where it was the realm of the non-physical. That's your soul, okay? Your soul is a non-material, non-physical reality. It is from those souls, those non-material realities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He created from yourselves mates, azwaj, okay, mates. And we will come to this idea of mates, what we mean by mates. That you may find tranquility in them and He placed between you affection and mercy. Muwadda wa rahma. Muwadda is love. Allah is talking about this muwadda in the relationship between the azwaj, between the males or the masculine and the feminine. Indeed, in that are signs for people who think deeply. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this reality of males and females coming from a particular undifferentiated soul. Now, when we think about the signs of Allah, we know that the entirety of creation are signs of Allah. This leads to the Urafa, the sages in Islam, to think about that primordial soul that had not been differentiated. In some philosophical circles, they call it the androgyne. Androgyne, for which you get words like androgynous, for example. Okay? But we're not talking about androgyne on this kind of a level. We're not talking about androgyne where, for example, for most people in society, it is related to some kind of physical type of phenomenon. Okay? For example, like hermaphroditism, or people dressing in a certain ambiguous way, and so forth. We're not talking about this. Okay? We're talking about something on a much higher level than this. We're talking about this on the level of the masculine and the feminine. When I say masculine and feminine, I do not mean males and females. Okay? We mean in terms of quality. I'll give you an example. Muhammad Ali was more feminine than Mike Tyson. What do you mean by this? Muhammad Ali's boxing had more art, had more class, had more grace, which are all feminine qualities. Doesn't take away from Muhammad Ali as a masculine man. Okay? This is how he fought. He considered himself, for example, as a fighter, he considered himself beautiful. He even called himself pretty. Okay? And by calling himself pretty, it kind of goes back to how we tend to look at things in a general sort of a social context, right? For example, if you see you got a bad pair of shoes there, it means not bad as bad, but bad as good. Too good to be called good. Alright? You go full circle. Alright? That's a wicked top you're wearing. It doesn't mean wickedness. Okay? It means so beautiful, it becomes wicked. It's doing something to me that I don't like. Alright? So we're talking about this type of aspect. Mike Tyson, on the other hand, is more masculine in his boxing, more brutal. Okay? They said about Muhammad, I don't want to get too much into boxing, but they said that Muhammad Ali, he was like a knockout artist. Alright? He was a beat you down kind of an artist, you know what I'm saying? With some class. Okay? Mike Tyson was a knockout artist. One is masculine, one is feminine, but it does not mean that they are women. Okay, we're talking about that type of a level. And so we have this androgyne that has these masculine and feminine qualities all combined in one. Okay? We're talking about the perfect human being on that level of the soul. Now Allah is saying that this is a sign, and all of creation means the signs of Allah, and so the sages say that creation is Allah's self-expression. The self-expression of Allah is creation. And so when we look at creation, we are encouraged to meditate upon it, and see what lessons that we can learn from it. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying. And when Allah chooses out of all of creation certain things that He calls His signs and calls us to meditate and think about, it means that these signs are very, very superior signs. These signs are very deep, and that if we really dwell on it and think about it and meditate about it and read about it and so forth, lots of doors will start opening to us. Now, when we look at creation, we think of creation. Creation is basically, many of the ulama talk about it as a polarization. Okay, a polarization. It's a polarization that begins on the level of Allah Himself. Okay? Now, Allah is all-knowing. Allah is all-loving. What's the first thing that Allah knows? Allah knows Himself. What's the first thing that Allah loves? Allah loves Himself. Allah is the epitome of beauty. Okay? These things are in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, when Allah creates creation, where does that creation come from? That creation comes from Himself. In other words, there's a very beautiful hadith that says, Allah says, I was a hidden treasure. Okay, this is a very popular and well-known hadith both in Shia and Sunni circles. I was a hidden treasure, and I desired to be loved. Also, I loved to be known. So I created creation that I be known. All right? Khalaqtu khalqan. This word khalq could be translated as creation, or it is used also for a human being. In this case, I would prefer to think of it as both. In other words, Allah is creating creation. Why? Because He knows Himself. He knows Himself as a beautiful creation, a beautiful treasure. What is a treasure? A treasure is something both beautiful, right, and also something that gives you wealth, something that is useful. Okay? You don't think of a treasure as dollars and cents and stuff like that. A treasure has rubies and diamonds and emeralds and that type of thing. That's a treasure. Okay, something beautiful as well as something useful. And so He says, I desire to be known. I love to be known because I was so beautiful. I'm so beautiful. I am so useful. I have so much mercy. I love to be known, so I created creation in order to be known. That how is both creation and knowledge. Interestingly enough, you find in contemporary theology, okay, in Christian circles actually, it began there, but it doesn't end there because I think we can learn from this as well. There's an idea called the anthropic model of creation. Okay, the material world. And this is sort of an extension of a previous similar type of idea, which they call fine-tuning. Now let's start with fine-tuning. The fine-tuning of the universe. What is the universe fine-tuned for, they say? The universe is fine-tuned for life. The universe is fine-tuned for life. And you know, fine-tuning means something that is precisely set at a particular point, that if you deviate a little bit left or a little bit right, you lose it. This is what we mean by fine-tuning. And so they talk about fine-tuning in terms of, for example, things like the speed of light, or the construction of the carbon atom, or the characteristics of the hydrogen or the oxygen molecule, and so forth. And they say that if the speed of light was any slower, if gravity was any stronger or any weaker, if the carbon atom had any other structure, no life would exist. None would exist. Okay? And this is why they call it the fine-tuning of the universe. The universe is fine-tuned for life to exist. Okay? If the periodic table was different, anything being slightly different. Look at, for example, the distance of the Earth and the Sun. The Earth is precisely located in that orbit around the Sun that will afford life on the Earth. One little degree closer or one little degree further away, there will be no life on the Earth. The universe is fine-tuned for life. And then they go on to another level and they say, the universe is fine-tuned for observation. It's fine-tuned for observation. Okay? Everything in the universe is designed in such a way that an observer should be able to see it, to understand it, and to know that it exists. Okay? So for example, your sight related to, let's say for example, the speed of light, your sight with respect to the construction of the eye, those things that the eyes require, all of these things, the universe is designed for it. There's a very interesting experiment in quantum physics, where, I think maybe people who are into physics will know this type of thing, where, for example, let's try to give you the sort of general sort of picture, okay? they are shooting subatomic particles towards the screen. All right? Between the screen and the gun, or whatever that fires those subatomic particles, they put a barrier. Okay? And in that barrier, they have a slit. And so when these subatomic particles are fired to this screen, some of them go through the slit and they impact upon the screen behind. When you look at the screen behind, what they see is a dotted pattern, of course, right, in a line, okay, that is correlates with the gap in that screen. Interestingly enough, when you put two lines, two apertures, right, long ones, and you fire the same amount of subatomic particles, the pattern that it presents on the screen behind is a wave pattern. In the first case, it was a particle pattern, as individual units of matter actually hitting the screen. But when they put two of them, you get this wave pattern of circles, intersecting with each other and so forth. So they were curious, how come? How does this happen? They had no idea. So what they did was they decided to observe the patterns, observe the particles as they emerge from those two apertures. So they put a camera, because you can't really go there in your body. I mean, these are subatomic particles flying there, you can't really put yourself there. They put a camera. And when they put a camera there, it changed back from a wave pattern to a particularized pattern with dots when they put a camera. Okay? So it seems like the presence of the camera, in other words, the presence of the observer has an effect upon these subatomic particles. When they move the camera, it is a camera. Okay? It reverted back to wave pattern. Okay, now there's a big difference between a wave and a particle. Okay, a wave is not a particle. Okay, a wave is a force. Okay, a wave is a force. Forces are not particles. Okay, force is just energy. All right. So when it moves from wave to particle, it's like moving between two extremes where it cannot be like that. All right. Out of this idea, and this is where we could debate, out of this idea comes the idea that whenever we look at something, what we see is the material representation of that thing, as compared to when we turn away from it, it might revert to something else. And they call this something like the simulation theory of existence and so forth. But what I just want to tell you or show you how observation has a very, very intimate relationship with what we see and how we perceive things. Now, when we talk about male and female and so forth, we start with Allah loving Himself, Allah realizing, Allah knowing that this self of His being is one that is very important, is very good for Him to share, to create something, to give that attention to give that care to, for them to be exposed to that beauty that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has. So it begins with Allah, in a sense, being the observer and the observed of Himself as well. Himself being the observer and the observed. And right there at that point, we find a kind of a polarity that is taking place on the inward level. This is expressed on the outward level, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator. And so He creates outwardly a representation of that which reflects Him. So the outward creation now again is another kind of polarity, because you have the creator and the created. And so you have this idea, this reality of opposites, of complementary opposites that are taking place even on the level of the divine and on the level of creation. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this in the Holy Quran, where He says, وَمِن كُلِّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقْنَا زَوْجَيْنِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَذَكَّرُونَ. He says, everything we have created in pairs. Okay, zawjain, pairs in order for you to reflect. Now, when we talk about azwaj, when we talk about this type of pairing, we have two aspects of this we have to consider. When we look at opposites, because we see this as kind of an opposition, it's observer and observed and that type of a thing. When we look at opposites, we notice that there are two types of opposites. Okay, we have one opposite that is usually the negation of its its other. All right. You find it in English, for example, it might be preceded by a prefix like dis or ab, ab, or non, and so forth. That tells the opposites. Okay, but not all mutually exclusive opposites are like this. Okay, linguistically. Sometimes it might not be a linguistic type of a relationship, like black and white, like generosity and stinginess, for example. Okay. Then you have another type of opposite. That other opposite, is not something that is responsible for creation, or is not an aspect of creation itself, because it always negates its opposite. All right. Love and hate. The more love you have, the less hate. The more hate you have, the less love. You can't have both of them at the same strength. You can't have that. One is either dominant over the other. Then you have another kind of opposite. Okay? This is what we would call the azwaj. Okay? They are complementary opposites. They are opposites which each one of them requires the other one to exist. Okay? Like teacher and student. These are opposites. Okay? It is impossible to think about a teacher who has never had a student or who never teaches. It's impossible to think of a student who never had a teacher. We might be a good potential teacher, but unless you have a student, you cannot think of yourself as a teacher. Okay? Like, for example, father and mother. Okay, being a father requires that he should have a mother for that child that they have. Or being a mother requires that you have a father for that child that you have. Okay? So we have complementary opposites. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about, how He created the world. The entirety of this world, is based upon this type of complementary oppositional relationship that we have with each other. And sometimes and most of the times, in these complementary relationships, we have a product that comes out of it. Okay? Between teacher and student, the product is knowledge. Okay? Between father and mother, the product is child. Between, for example, the positive pole of a battery and the negative pole of a battery, the product is what? Electricity. So there's always something that is produced out of this thing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that, this is how I've created the world. And even in terms of our thinking, we have a kind of a discursive logic. Okay? This also employs opposites and so forth in their relationship. So this, relationship is represented in human beings in terms of the male and the female. And so you would find that the male, because remember, the universe is based upon this type of a relationship. And we find that among the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have these types of relationships as well. Because, among the 99 names, of course, it's not only 99 names. There are thousands of names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you read Joshan al-Kabir, for example, you have over 1,000 names of Allah in that Joshan al-Kabir. Right? But when we're talking about the names of Allah, many of the ulama tend to categorize the names in terms of the masculine names, the Jalali names of Allah, the names of majesty of Allah, and the Jamali names of Allah, the names of beauty of Allah. And the Jalali names of Allah are names of power, of might. Allah is a mumit, He gives death, and then you have on the other hand, the feminine names of Allah, in terms of al-mumit, al-hayy, for example, okay, or al-muhib, where Allah gives life. All right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said that in the Holy Quran that He has made made His mercy greater than His wrath. His mercy greater than His wrath. Okay? His feminine aspect greater than His masculine aspect. He has made it this way. Okay? So Allah is more mercy than He is wrath. And because this feminine name of Allah comes under the name of beauty of Allah, many great ulama like Ibn Arabi and so forth, when we come to the idea of meditating upon the signs of Allah, which is His creation, they say that the highest sign to meditate on Allah, of course under the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt, but even there you have that happening. Even there you have that happening. And just to digress, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam says, we, meaning the Imams, are witness to you on the day of judgment, and Hazrat Fatima Zahra is witness over us. Okay? So you have this very strong spiritual feminine element taking place. I mean, we live in a society right now where, for example, it's a Viking type of a culture, where men are supposed to be masculine with a sword and they don't cry and all this type of stuff. Okay? Which makes many of them die young because they don't cry. You see? But what you would find is that when we look at the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we see in him a very beautiful balance of the masculine and the feminine. Okay? We see him, for example, crying. We see him, for example, being described as more bashful than a virgin. We see him being beloved by his companions. Okay? These are all feminine aspects. All right? At the same time, he was a great general. He was a great fighter. You know what I mean? He did punish people and so forth. And he also did forgive people as well. You see? So you have this balance in him. And this is what Islam is trying to create in all of us. All right? So now, the woman represents this beauty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if Nabi comes and says, the best of creation for the arif to meditate upon in terms of getting close to Allah is the female, is the feminine, because they represent this type of beauty, this type of closeness, this uns that all of us have for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we pray to Allah in His feminine aspect. We pray to Allah for forgiveness. We pray to Allah to take care of us and all these types of things. We pray to Allah for His love and so forth. These are all praying to Allah as mother. And when it comes to fighting against the oppressor and calling to Allah for justice and so forth, we are praying to Him as Father. All right? Of course, I'm speaking in metaphorical terms. Don't quote me as being a Christian or something like that. Okay? And so we have this type of relationship. So in modern society, when you start talking about the equality between men and women, we have to be really specific. What do we mean by equality? Because I tell you something, there's no such thing as equality in the qualitative realm. There's no such thing as equality in the qualitative realm. Okay? You have an orange and you have an apple. Okay? As they're both fruits. But we cannot say the orange is equal to the apple. All right? They require different things. They require, they have different effects and so forth. All right? You can't say they are the same or they are equal as fruits. Because this is what equality means. Equality talks about having something in common, some common reference point, okay, that is reflected in the things that you want to compare. Alright? But when you're talking about a special quality that is characteristic for that thing and that thing alone, you cannot really compare them. And you find in Western society, they are losing this. They are losing this subtle qualitative aspect of life. And so they can only see human beings as biological accidents. And so, the whole idea of men and women are being equal. We accept that men and women are equal based upon the measure that we are talking about. So, for example, you have a man and a woman working at the same job, showing up for work at the same time. You see what I'm saying? Then they should have equal pay. You see? But you cannot say that a man could be a woman. Because a man is qualitatively different to a woman. You cannot say a woman is a man. Because a woman is qualitatively different to a man. And so therefore they require their own background, their own context for us to understand. And so this movement towards making masculinity and femininity or maleness and femaleness a question of a choice, when you reduce femininity to just how you walk and what kind of clothing you wear and how long you make your hair, and if you put on makeup and that makes you a woman, this is a sign of the decline of modern society, where they are unable now to see the qualitative reality of men and women, especially of women. Because you find in these type of societies a greater and greater alienation of women, regardless of what they think they believe in, regardless of what they say. It's really an alienation of women. They have women thinking of themselves purely in terms of physical attractiveness. That's it. Okay? And being a woman is not a spirit. It's not a spirit of love, for example. In Islam, women marry men. Men don't marry women, Right? A man might chase after a woman, but she marries the man. Okay? She's the one who says, I'm marrying myself to you for the particular mah and so forth. What the man does is say, I agree. Okay, why? Because women come under that sign of love. Just as for example, when we think about the love of Allah, we think in the terms of Rahman and Rahim. And what is the root word of this? Where does this come from? The word Rahm, which is womb. So this is a really truly feminine aspect of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. First of all, you have Allah, the comprehensive name, and then you have Allah, Rahman and Rahim, which are equal themselves to the name Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah says, call upon Allah or call upon Rahman. Okay? And that goes back to the womb. And Allah warns us of how we treat the wombs, how we treat our womb. Give salawat to the Holy Prophet Muhammad and his family. It is because women are that aspect. Women are the kind of souls of our humanity. Because women represent this aspect, you find that men of all denominations and all times except this one, you find men always give a greater importance to the lives of women and children than to themselves. When you hear about people dying or being killed, and we hear a woman dies or a number of women die, our hearts, for men and women, naturally feel that pain, naturally empathize. Women make us empathize. Women encourage us to empathize. They cultivate us in empathy. And so you find that women tend to be very important in the expression of spirituality. When we look at the major prophets that we talk about, we find that they have women very significant in their lives, or more than one woman. For example, when we think about Hazrat Adam, there's Hazrat Hawa. When we think of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there's Hazrat Khadija and there's Hazrat Fatima. Okay? And you'd find that, for example, the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how did you relate to Hazrat Fatima to Zahra sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Whenever she came into a room and he was sitting, he would stand up. He would stand up. He didn't stand up for everybody, he stood up for her. And he'd make her sit right next to him. Imam Ali alayhi salam, he had Hazrat Fatima to Zahra. Imam Hussein alayhi salam has Hazrat Zainab. Hazrat Musa, he has his mother. Okay? So you find that women tend to be always accompanying these prophets. And they are the hidden aspect of this relationship. They're the ones who give them support. They're the ones who give them comfort and so forth as they move along. When you talk about women, for example, being a sign of Allah, And we talk about hijab, for example. You know, a lot of people, when you ask them, you know, where did hijab come from? People might say that it comes from the companions, the women companions, you know, maybe they talk about Islam legislating it and so on and so on. Where does the hijab come from? Hijab is a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala itself. You know, we have a hadith that says between Allah and creation that there are 70,000 hijabs of light and darkness. 70,000 hijabs. When women are wearing hijab, they reflect Allah. And it says that the closer we get to Allah, Allah removes a veil. Okay, this is exactly what happens when we get more intimate with a woman we are married to, or we are in one of their relationship, family relationship that is, you know, it's a Muharram relationship. You know, when you find that veil is removed because you have a more familiarity, you have a greater affinity with each other and so forth, you know, it's removed just like that. The same thing is happening with us in our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, in Karbala, we find women and children there. And the most important aspect of Karbala where women are concerned are two. One is their presence on the battlefield, well, not the battlefield itself, but the presence in the area. They are acting as chroniclers. They are acting as the reporters. They're getting the information of what is happening. They're the ones who see their beloved go and fight and come back crushed. They're the ones who are seeing their children go out and fight and come back, you know, cut up to pieces. They're the ones who are feeling that pain and expressing that pain on that battlefield. It is their pain that we tend to hear more about than the pain of the other companions for the loss of their loved ones. When they leave Karbala, they are the ones who are the purveyors and the ones who spread the information as to what actually happened there. They are our Instagramming of that time. They're the ones, they were TV at that time. If it wasn't for them, the story of Karbala will not have come to us. They are the ones who start meetings like this. They are the ones who that have created the opportunity for us to emulate when it comes to having our grief. Because when they came back to Medina and they started to talk about this, you know, they started to cry and they started to weep. They didn't have much time to weep and cry when they were on the battlefield. They didn't have much time to weep and cry when they were in the prisons of Yazid. But when they came back to the people, they relived this for them. And we are following in that footsteps. And what it shows us is the very important role women have to play in the continuation of culture. Women have that role, especially. You know, men are out there working and stuff like that. Women are raising the children. In this modern society, they do not want women to raise children. Okay? That's why they have organized it such that you can't even buy a house and buy it on one salary. You have, first of all, you know, everybody's got a right to buy a house. You know, the whole idea of mortgages and landlords and so on did not exist until this time when they, in their quantitative orientation, put a price on living. Put a price on living. Put a price on your home. That your home is something that you should pay somebody for, or you should buy it from somebody. You know, in traditional society, you know, you got married as a kid, everybody put in together, found a plot of land, and everybody built that house for this married couple. And so we have in this society today, they are not being able to see the qualitative reality of women. Women are the creators of civilization. Women are the creators of society. When you take the women out of that picture, and you have a father who's already working outside, they now make the state, the school system, the replacement for parents. And so us as parents, because we're ignorant, you know, we rely upon the school to raise our kids for us. We rely upon the school to raise our kids for us. You know, and out of that reliance, this is what you get. You know, you get the impunity of these educational systems to groom your children, into thinking of themselves not as servants of Allah, but to groom your children into thinking of them as people who have particular sexual preferences, brothers and sisters. Okay? It's not just about who you identify with, it's about who you're going to sleep with. And they want to start that kind of stuff from 4 years old and 6 years old and so forth. They deny our integral reality of ourselves. And so Karbala and the experiences of Karbala is a reaction to that, is an answer to that. That women have a very important role to play in the development of our children, the civilization or civilizing men, and putting us in touch with our hearts, with our souls. And this is why we cry for them. Okay, because we are actualizing our feminine aspect as men when we talk about the tradition of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Could women fight? Yes, women can pick up a weapon and fight. From an Islamic point of view, it is not recommended. It is only recommended under very extreme circumstances. Why? Because women represent rahmah. Okay? Taking a life, whatever life it is not rahmah. Okay? It could be justice, but it's not rahmah. This is why women are not allowed to fight. Okay? Unless it is absolutely necessary. You know, we have certain jobs or quality or careers that in an Islamic context, not in a secular context, in an Islamic context, women are not encouraged to pursue. Okay? For example, women are not encouraged to pursue to be a judge, right? Because being a judge, again, is not rahmah. A judge can be merciful. I'm not denying that. But judgment puts aside all of these things and you deal with the cold hard facts and you make a judgment. That's male. You see? It's not a women can't be good judges. You know, this whole idea about women being too emotional to judge, I think it's a bunch of nonsense, to tell you the truth. Right? If anybody watched Judge Judy is much more rational than me, I'm telling you. Okay? It's not about that. You know, for example, we have a hadith about one of the signs or one of the accomplishments of Imam Mahdi, when they say that, for example, women would be making fatwa in their houses. So women are making fatwa in their houses in the time of the Imam. Okay? So you have different ways of approach. It is not that women are too emotional, they can't judge, or it's not that women can't be soldiers and so forth. No. But in terms of the symbolic reality of what women are, okay, that they represent this aspect of the divine. Okay? That women are not allowed to do this. Okay? Because men are not allowed to take on a feminine type of tasks. Okay? Because at the same time it goes against their whole symbolic aspect of it. And these things are very, very limited. Okay? There's one more I can't remember, but there's at least 2 or 3 types of occupations that women are not really allowed but not encouraged to pursue. Now, in a society like this one, a Muslim sister could be a judge, that doesn't matter, this is a different context. Because in the Islamic system, in an Islamic state, you'd find that everything is a symbol. Everything is a symbol. Okay? Hijab is a symbol, a masjid is a symbol, how the society is arranged and so forth are symbols. When you look at the most prominent buildings in Muslim societies, for example, they tend to be masajid. When you look at the prominent buildings in this society, they tend to be insurance companies and banks. They're the most beautiful or the highest buildings that you can find and so on. You know, it's a big difference. So architecture is a big difference. And the whole Islamic society is a representative of that. So, but you will see as we go on these nights, you will see that, you know, we start talking about the women and the children and so forth. And these are very, very important because, as I mentioned to you before, they evoke in us, all of us, the empathy of our souls. They evoke that in all of us. Just like Palestine, okay? One of the major effects upon us is, one, the mothers, two, the murdered babies, and three, then praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What do these Muslims know that other people don't know? These Muslims know that this suffering, the more intense it is, the reward with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is great. In an environment like this, you would find that the shuhada, not only are those people who have died and in their death, their sacrifice for a higher cause, they realize the truth. They realize the truth. Okay, they bear witness to the truth. But they also affect us in terms of us bearing witness to the truth. You know, so for example, you know, I saw this account of this man whose house was bombed, and he's lying in the rubble and he's unconscious and he is sort of dreaming. Okay, he finds himself in some place with his wife and his son, a very beautiful place. And then his wife and his son got together and they told him goodbye. Okay, we'll see you around. Okay, and they left. And when he woke up, he was the only one that survived. His wife and son had passed away. And the angel who spoke to him said, your time is not yet. Another one, you know, you have, for example, you know, this kid is running towards his mother. This is a real thing, huh? Bomb drops on the kid, kills the kid. The kid sees his mother, the mother sees the kid in the dream. And the child says, while I was running to you, all of a sudden I found myself running in Jannah. All of a sudden. You know, in these environments where this belief and this understanding and this way of appreciating a different perspective in that society, you find that one's consciousness expands. And this is not just only for Islam, okay? This is for every traditional religion you find in the world. You know, when you go into some of these areas, when you go into some of these societies where they still are in tune with spirituality, they see things that we don't see in this world. Okay? What we see in this world is all the neon. You know, and that side is all the light of truth. And so, as Zainab, salamu alayha, her children and the women brought this news back. And so because of her, and because of them, we are able to remember this and to identify with this so much that every time we see something that reminds us of Karbala, we know what side to take and we know what has to be done. Every time. And it is thanks to them. So women are very, very important communicators. Very important communicators. And you find that in this struggle as well right now, you find a lot of women are very, very prominent in this whole movement. You know, and this is a sign. This tells us what women are. You know, they give that grace, they give that blessing to us when we are struggling. And so brothers and sisters, I want to encourage you, to encourage your daughters, to encourage your wives, to encourage your sisters, okay, to recognize that they have a very important task. Their task is more important than ours, actually. You know, is to create an Islamic reality, an Islamic community. You know, when we say heaven lies at the feet of mothers, it means a lot of things. You know, it means, for example, the existence of your mother itself. And it's a problem I've had with people, all right? You know, they might have some problems in their marriage, and I find out, you know, what's your relationship with your mom, for the guy, for example? You know, and it's not really a good relationship sometimes. You see? The existence of mothers is one that their very existence itself is one that is important for your liberation, for your spiritual development. Regardless of what that mother is like, regardless if she's a kafir, just a mere existence. Alright? The other aspect of women is that they reconnect men with God. They reconnect men with God. Okay? They increase our spiritual level. And the third aspect is that on their laps, they educate the new generation. They educate the new generation. You see, I think you have to be careful about this in terms of your time, how you spend your time with your kids. All right? Don't let TV or the internet raise them. You raise them, and you raise them to become like the sons of Zainab. You know, like the daughters of Imam Hussein, alayhi salam. You know, so that they would be people who too stand up against injustice and who could train humanity. This is all to the Holy Prophet Muhammad. I'd like to end with a little short story about Burair, who was another of the companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Burair was also a follower of Imam Ali alayhi salam. And Burair was an older man, and he was a Hafid of Quran, and a very spiritual person. And he decided to join Imam Hussein alayhi salam to fight on his behalf. And you know, they say that, you know, one of the things about Burair was that, you know, before the encounter on the battlefield, Burair was really, really happy, you know, joking and stuff like that. You know, and they would ask, and some people were upset with Burair, why are you making, tomorrow, you know, most of us might die. Why are you so happy? Why are you, you know, cracking jokes and having fun? Right? Just because I know where I'm going tomorrow. Tomorrow. And I'm happy about this. The consciousness of these people was so high. Alright? You know, how many of us are happy to be going to Jannah? How many of us are so sure we're going to be going to Jannah and we'll be happy? How many of us might be lying on our deathbed and being afraid more than looking forward to crossing that barzakh and going into that higher realm? And so Burair was like this. And he said, no, why should I be upset? I know where I'm going. You know, I know I'll be happy there. You see? And so Burair goes on the battlefield and he defends Imam Hussein and he fights and so forth. And Burair is eventually killed by this man, I can't remember his name. And the account said that when this man went back home to his wife, and his wife had heard, and he told his wife what he did, his wife said, and here again, woman, right? His wife said to him, you mean to say that you stood up against the son of Fatima and you killed Burair? She said, I would never talk to you again. This man was so crestfallen. The entire community started to put this guy aside. And I think what it shows us is this, that even when they do their crimes, you know, the crimes don't stay in that place where they have carried it out. They take it with them, or it follows them. It follows them in their social relationships. It follows them in their private relationships. You know, and it changes people's reaction to their relationship with you. You know, and this is one of the kind of a suffering that you encounter when you are in this world. Assalamu alaikum ya Aba Abdullah. والله التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.